Thank you very much to the panel for going through so much material so well and so much to time, which leaves us a few minutes before lunch for some questions, if anyone would like to raise any. Judith, yeah.
Yeah, thank you to the panel for a set of very interesting presentations. I just wanted to ask something really related to Lydia's presentation on the transfer of law. And a lot of what has been said about the Great Repeal Bill talks very much in terms of specific bits of legislation being transferred. But actually, the EU law system as a whole is very different from the UK law system. It's very much more principles-based. VAT is based on principles. You've got principles like the abuse of rights, which is actually quite alien to the UK law system. And I wondered if you could say a little bit about how that kind of thing is going to work once we're no longer in the EU. It's slightly less tangible than some of the stuff that's been mentioned in the Great Repeal Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way that's a similar question to the point I was making on whether we incorporate the fundamental freedoms, because, I mean, it's fundamental freedoms plus all the principles that the EU courts apply when they're deciding tax cases, or any cases. And I think at the moment it's quite unclear from the white paper what's intended in that respect. In order to achieve the stated objective of there being no change from day -1 to day +1, I think you would have to, and the UK courts would then have to wrestle with applying those principles in the absence of matters, which they do have to do anyway, because cases only go to the Court of Justice if the UK courts can't work out what the right EU answer is. So they would just have to do more of that. But I agree with you. I think it's quite a difficult question. It's not yet clear. I imagine that when the bill is actually published, there will be a lot more detail around some of this stuff, because people must be working on that.
Can I just say, don't you think it goes even further than that? Because some of these principles have become so imbued in our thinking that they will just be there in the way the court considers things, so quite regardless of whether it was pre or post.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly an element to that. I think you often get cases, though, where the courts have to, they have to dissect their analysis into saying, okay, so if we're looking just at UK law, what's the answer here? What would be the answer under our rules? Do we then have to do something else under EU rules? And so I think that analysis will probably remain in, the way it's done. It's just that it will be, when you're looking at, do we have to do something different under EU rules, that it won't be that question. It'll be, is there a pre-exit EU-derived law that means that there's a conflict?
That's very interesting. I carry on talking about that, but we've got another question from John Snape here.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's John Snape at the University of Warwick. Thank you. This is a question for Richard Collier, if I may. I might just ask this question, which is non-ideologically loaded, and then get under the desk. And it may have a certain familiar air to it, but I think it's an important one. Did I understand you rightly to say that the three of the elements that you were worried about in developments going forward were, one, so this is not all of them, but three of them, the potential for increased use of anti-avoidance measures affecting inward investment decisions, the actions of states relative to BEPS, and an increasingly or highly politicised approach to tax policy. Is that a fair summary of three of the points you made?
Well, I wasn't really expressing concerns about them, but so much drawing attention to the fact that I thought they were the key factors supporting the consensus of states. And I was therefore trying to go on and therefore suggest that consensus is not the most rock solid that you would like. I mean, for example, it's not based on a review of the balance of source and residence taxing rights. There's,
Okay.
it's an anti-avoidance agenda, so that's really
Okay, no, that's interesting. Those are interesting points. So just pushing at that a little bit. So in relation to the last one, yeah, I think you said that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that political priorities change. So politics is not a great foundation for tax policy. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay. So here are my questions. I can get under the desk after this. What do you take politics to mean? And secondly, what alternative basis for tax law could there be apart from politics in a state?
Well, I'm conscious we're keeping everybody from lunch, so...
They're big questions.
Yes. What I was trying to do was to contrast the support for the environment of BEPS. Anybody who's followed the OECD would probably say that there has been a massive difference in terms of the way the BEPS project has run as against how the OECD was functioning before BEPS. And my point was really that I do believe that the OECD has, as it turns out very successfully, if you take that view, engaged with a highly politicized, I think that's what I said, politicized agenda to deliver BEPS. And the point I was making is that was one of the three factors that, in my mind, gives it a shaky foundation. And I was trying to draw out parallels with the history of the harmful tax practices, where every 2 or 3 years we hair off in a different direction, and my point was that this was all part of an argument that we've reached a high point of consensus, and it's not going further. The wider questions you've raised about politics and tax, yes, I mean that we can debate that, but it's not really what I was talking about.
Well,
I was talking about.
No, sorry, I don't want to push it because obviously I don't want to prolong the exchange unnecessarily. But I'm not sure you can detach politics from politicised in quite so easy a way, actually. And I don't want. As I say, I won't push it.
I think that's a really good place to end an Oxford discussion. Over lunch, we shall discuss the difference between politicised and politics, and come back with an answer this afternoon. But thank you very much to all the contributors.